We don't support murderers going to healing lodges.
Tonight, Canadians rally on the Hill saying healing lodges should be off limits for some offenders.
It's absolutely atrocious that any child was beaten with this strap.
Anyone questioning the good of residential schools needs to see this story about a made-in-Canada painful artifact.
Is it a license to kill? We don't know. We certainly hope not.
And concerns by First Nations in Saskatchewan over heavily armed conservation officers. Good evening. Welcome to APTN National News. I'm Melissa Ridgen. Over 100 people rallied on Parliament Hill Friday morning, angry about the transfer of child killer Terry Lynn McClintock to an Indigenous healing lodge. They all wore purple, the favorite color of Tori Stafford, who was 8 when she was kidnapped and murdered by McClintock and her boyfriend in 2009. Protesters want the government to remove McClintock from the Okamaochi Healing Lodge and put her back behind bars. They called it Justice for Tori.
Our Justice Minister, there's nothing stopping every one of us from calling him up and saying that we don't support murderers going to healing lodges. It's wrong and it's shameful.
The laws need to change to keep these monsters behind bars and have them serve their full sentence that has been given to them. They need to serve out their time, and that is one of the reasons why we are here today, to change the laws. Life means life and no healing lodge.
While the rally was going on outside the House of Commons, inside, the Conservative opposition demanded action from the government.
Madam Speaker, Liberals always put criminals ahead of victims and law-abiding Canadians. Tori Stafford's killer was transferred from jail to a healing lodge on their watch. Today, her loved ones are gathering to call for action, demanding that child killers be kept behind bars, not in healing lodges without fences. But so far, the Liberals refuse to act. Canadians are outraged about it. What is taking so long, and when will the Liberals actually do the right thing and put Tori's killer back behind bars where she belongs?
The Honourable Minister of Public Safety.
Mr. Speaker, Madam Speaker, all members of this House would share the deep angst of the families who have tragically lost children to crime. And that's why I asked for a thorough review by the Corrections Commissioner to ensure long-standing policy in these matters has been followed and to reassess the appropriateness of those policies to determine that they are, in fact, the right ones. The report was made available late yesterday, Madam Speaker. I'm reviewing it at the moment. We all want this system to be as good as it can possibly be for the protection of the public.
A teen from the Stoney Nakoda First Nation in Alberta, accused of shooting a German tourist in the head in August, has been granted bail. The 60-year-old tourist was driving to Banff when shots were fired from a passing vehicle. The tourist survived the attack and returned to Germany, where surgeons removed a bullet. The teen charged faces 14 charges, including attempted murder and 8 gun-related offenses. His release conditions include staying away from drugs and alcohol, and he's also to remain at his grandparents' home on the reserve.
It's not that he's out and being a free person. He's subject to, I think it's about 14 different conditions, including a 24-hour house arrest, which will keep him basically under lock and key unless he's at school or in the company of an adult.
We want to hear what you think. Here's how you can continue the conversation. You can send your emails to news@aptn.ca. Find us online at aptnnews.ca and on youtube.com/aptnnews. You can also follow APTN News on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram for more Indigenous news. The Saskatchewan government plans to introduce armed conservation officers with military-grade assault rifles. They say that move will keep everyone safer, but the Federation of Sovereign Indigenous Nations disagree. The FSIN says the provincial government failed to consult properly with First Nations groups in Saskatchewan. As a result, FSIN also says they will look into having conservation officers banned from entering reserve lands if they're equipped with these rifles.
The potential is there where we may have a tragedy in the future, And this provincial government, the conservation officers, will be held liable. Is it a license to kill? We don't know. We certainly hope not. We certainly hope not.
They say running won't help your problems, but if you're a young Inuk from Nunavik, it might just get you a free trip to the Cayman Islands. Tom Fenario explains.
It's one thing to run 12 kilometers. It's another to do it when the temperatures reach 30 below.
It's hard to breathe.
I don't know how to explain, but it's like just really, it's like you're a smoker.
This is the Kuujjuaq Running Club. This day's run is happening at a balmy -4. They'll be running in much colder conditions before they reach their goal of 21 kilometers, a half marathon.
Well, what keeps me going is usually when I'm with the others. Because when everyone's running, I just look at myself, they're running, I can do it too.
As much as Karina has come to enjoy running, it wasn't always the case. Like many others here, she took it up as a way to travel, and not just for 21 kilometers.
The trip got me. It's like, whoa, they're going all the way, like out of the country to run. I was like, might as well do it too.
Last year, the running club did a half marathon in Barbados. This year, their sight is set on the Cayman Islands. But it takes more than just training to get there. These runners spent their Sunday afternoon labeling books for the new Kuujjuaq Youth Library. Every book labeled equals $1 towards the trip. It's all part of the running club's not-so-hidden agenda.
For one, it allows the kids somewhere to go and something to do. Some kids maybe don't want to go home after school, and it gives them an activity that they can participate in.
Nunavik, the Inuit territory in subarctic Quebec, has a dropout rate of 74%. Thompson, a phys ed teacher who's head of the Kuujjuaq Running Club, says it's an incentive to stay in school.
If they're ever misbehaving in class, the teachers come talk to us, and then we make sure that they stay on track, because they have to miss school to go on the trips, and so they have to be able to pass their classes if they're missing school for the running club.
The running club program started in the Nunavik village of Saluit before spreading to other communities. Thompson says the Kuujjuaq Club started 3 years ago with 2 members. Now they have 15. Part of the appeal is that almost anyone can do it.
You don't need anything. You just go out and you run,
But there is one thing these young Inuit can't train for: tropical weather.
I think we just don't. This guy, he turns up the heat all the time. All the time. It's all the time.
Despite the heat, or maybe because of it, the Kuujjuaq runners will run the Cayman Islands Marathon on December 2nd. Tom Fenario, APTN National News, Kuujjuaq, Quebec.
I hope they take those dogs with them. It's time for a break, but when we come back, it's okay to be white posters stir some controversy. That's coming up, so stay with us, and here's tomorrow's weather forecast. Starting off in the East Coast, we have 14 in St. John's, Newfoundland, 16, and rain in Halifax. We got Inukjuak in at -3, Kuujjuaq's 2, Nain is 0. Lots of cloud down south. Chibougamau's got a little bit of sunshine, 1. Montreal is rain and 7. Toronto is 7 and rainy as well. Ottawa is +4 and rain. Sault Ste. Marie is 4 and a mix of sun and cloud. Big Trout Lake's -4. Sioux Lookout is 2. Churchill, snowy and 0. -3s for God's Lake, Norway House. 1 for Barons River, Princess Harbour, and Gimli with some sunshine. 3 and some rain in Winnipeg. Yorkton is -1. Estevan's +1, as is Regina with some rain there. Stony Rapids is rainy or snowy and -3. La Ronge, same thing, but -1. Welcome back. A Winnipeg University is investigating after someone posted signs around campus that many students say are racist. Ashley Branson reports.
Multiple posters saying it's okay to be white were spotted around the University of Manitoba campus Thursday morning. Now leaders on the campus are condemning acts of racism. University of Manitoba Student Union President Jacob Sanderson says they don't know who's responsible.
This message is troublesome to all people of color and all marginalized communities on campus.
The It's Okay to Be White slogan originated from an online message board. It's intended to provoke a strong reaction with a harmless-sounding message. Sanderson says the posters were faxed to the Department of Women and Gender Studies and the Department of Native Studies. Ashley Daniels and Brendan Wood are both part of the Indigenous Student Association. They say the doors and walls of the Native Studies Department were plastered with the posters.
It's just scary. It's scary that this is happening and it's clear. There's a clear target.
Honestly, I'm not surprised. There's a lot of racism that's going on, and it's gotten to a point where I don't feel safe as an Indigenous student on campus.
Sanderson says the University of Manitoba isn't the only campus to be plagued with these posters and is encouraging students to come forward with concerns.
It's our job right now as the leaders on this campus to be listeners as much as it is to be actors. So certainly we want to try and take action to address this, but perhaps even more importantly, we want to listen to students' concerns.
Ashley Branson, APTN National News, Winnipeg.
It's a disturbing artifact from the St. Margaret's Residential School for one Ontario family. Martha Troyan brings us a story of a homemade strap used to abuse students.
I'd say before he got sick, he was like a solid guy. He was a hockey player. When he was growing up, he played a lot of hockey. He was in, I guess, Manitoba Western Hockey Hall of Fame. He just got inducted, I think, 2 years ago.
Curtis Briere says his father, Rudy Briere, was a man of strength. The Couchiching First Nation man was known for his singing and for being an avid outdoorsman. He was also a survivor of the St. Margaret's Indian Residential School, once located on Couchiching Reserve, Ontario. One day, long after the school closed, he made a shocking discovery. 2 straps hidden inside a wall. Briere remembers being beaten as a young student by at least one of them. Growing up, Curtis saw that strap in his family's home.
The strap that he showed me, it was probably about maybe 1/4 inch, maybe almost 1/2 inch thick. And it was made of like conveyor belt glued together. About this long. Had like a little handle where you could hold it, and that's what they would hit the kids with.
The strap now sits in the National Centre for Truth and Reconciliation, a Winnipeg-based organization that preserves the history of the residential schools system.
There's no question that this is a very painful artifact. It's a very painful element of the entire residential school story. And it's absolutely atrocious that any child was beaten with this strap.
The end of the strap appears to be stained with dried blood. Printed on the back are the years Briere attended the school. Rai Moran is the director at the National Centre for Truth and Reconciliation. The family donated the strap to the centre.
As we see with this strap, it shows us just how extreme some of the conditions were inside of the schools for some children, how significant the abuse was that happened inside of the schools, and how real weapons were used against children inside of the schools.
Ian Mosby is a Canadian historian who has conducted extensive research into residential schools. He is horrified but not surprised by the maliciousness of the strap.
At the heart of this system is the dehumanization of children. The goal, this killing the Indian and the child, allowed, I think, teachers and priests and nuns to view the children as savages. And in doing so, it allowed them to act with cruelty.
The strap is a painful reminder for all of Canada, Moran says.
We as a country cannot forget. We cannot be allowed to forget. We have to keep telling these stories over and over and over again until there is not a single person in Canada that doesn't know this history.
Curtis is glad to know the device will be part of telling the history of the residential school system. Martha Troyan, APTN National News, Winnipeg.
When I'm done. APTN Investigates reporter Christopher Reed took an emotional journey with two men this fall back to a so-called Wilderness Challenge camp in Saskatchewan. It is Chris's debut with APTN Investigates, now in its 10th season, and he's here with the details. So how did this story find its way to you?
Well, I had already been doing some research into this area, and I had pitched a similar story. And our executive producer, Paul Barnsley, said, wait a minute, Chris, we've got this letter. I got this letter from this guy, Richard Yarema, who wrote a letter about this experience he had when he was a teenager as a juvenile delinquent in the parlance of the time. He was sent to a facility, a camp, where he was, it was supposed to be a place, it was called Wilderness Challenge, and the idea was you take a bunch of teenage boys out in the woods, basically, and you replace their interest in, high-speed car chases and breaking and entering with a love of, paddling a canoe 50 miles across a lake or surviving in the woods. And the idea was you'd be living with these other boys and, the counselors, and you'd all learn to rely on each other. You'd be there for maybe 2 years, and you'd kind of, it was a behavior modification program.
Okay.
The idea was you'd become a family, and you'd become a better citizen.
Mostly Indigenous kids?
Mostly Indigenous
and
kids.
Boys?
Yes,
okay.
Yes. And so then at some point, though, there were accusations of brutality going on in the camp. There was an investigation by the RCMP. There was an investigation by the government. And eventually we have a Royal Commission of Inquiry that looks into this. And the Royal Commission determines in the end that the stories the boys were telling about humiliation, being beaten, being denied food, being forced to work extremely long, grueling hours, doing things like digging pits and then filling them in.
Yeah.
They decided that these allegations were exaggerated. And they said that the camp should reopen, and this organization that was running the camps on behalf of the government, called the Rancheros Society, was cleared completely of wrongdoing. It was interesting, though, because the commission, while it said that the stories were exaggerated, in many cases it found that some version of the story was true.
Which should be enough.
Perhaps, right. Yes. So this guy, Richard Yarema, who wrote us a letter, said, well, actually, it was pretty bad, and the commission got it wrong. And he wrote this letter, and he told us about these other boys that were in the camp with him, including this guy, Guy Dumas. So we found Guy Dumas, and we found Richard Yarema, and we took them back to this remote facility in northern Saskatchewan.
Wow.
And just north of La Ronge. You fly out about 30 minutes.
I mean, you get to see this. This is all part of your, like them going back. This is part of your show tonight.
It's a return to Wilderness Challenge, and the idea was that Yarema and Dumas wanted to reconcile their experience in some way. And so for me personally, I spent much of the summer and autumn going over government documents, reading this report, and to meet these guys in person and to go there with them was a highly personally significant experience for me as well.
Well, and you're going to share that with us tonight, right after the national news.
Indeed.
Can't wait. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
A fundraiser for a rink for res girls. That's coming up after the break. But here's the rest of tomorrow's weather forecast. In northern Alberta, we've got -5 and snow in Fort McMurray's -1 and snow. 4 and cloud in Edmonton, 5 in Red Deer with some sunshine, 8 in Calgary and sunny. 10 and rain in Kamloops, 11 and rain in Penticton. Dease Lake is -4 and rainy. Fort Nelson -6. -50 and snow in Dawson City. -12 and snow in Mayo. -14 in Norman Wells. Lots of sunshine in Northwest Territories. -12 in Wrigley. Tuck is in at -11 and sunny. -11 and sunny and in Newvik as well. -14 and snow in Cambridge Bay. Arviat's -7 with a mix of sun and clouds. Repulse Bay -16 and sunny. Iqaluit's -6 with some snow, -23 with sunshine in Resolute, and Iqaluit is -18 and sunny. Welcome back. A Kingston area couple is hoping to help the Ibamatung First Nation get a new hockey rink. You might remember the girls' Pee-wee hockey team from there. They took Ottawa by storm last spring. The Koopmans joined me earlier from Ottawa to talk about this fundraising campaign. So tell us what made you decide to do this campaign.
We were first introduced to the Res Girl 64 from Fort Hope about a year ago through a CBC Doc Project podcast, and we just fell in love with the team and their determination with being from a First Nations fly-in community in Northern Ontario, and they graciously allowed us to sort of shadow them in Ottawa last year at their tournament. And we knew we could just help them out with something that would be for the greater good, the benefit to the team itself as well as to the community.
And so your goal for this is $90,000 through GoFundMe. How close are you so far?
We're pretty good. We're at 25,000 right now, and this is only in 2 weeks' time. So we've got a little bit of the tagline that we'd love 3,000 people to donate $30 in 30 days, and that would get us to 90,000. And logistically, it may get us able to get the undersurface or the cement base for the arena done for this season. But if logistically we can't do it, we're going to continue to fundraise to make sure they'll have it for the next year.
That's amazing. And so what are they doing in the interim if they don't have this pad underneath their rink that they need? How are they coping with not having that?
Well, yeah, well, they're going to cope just as they have the past 2 winters, where they practice on Ebnant Lake, which is right next to the school. So once the lake is frozen, they practice on it, and then consequently, once the temperature drops, they do have an arena, and they flood a raised pebbled pad with water, and they create a rink in that respect. So they will have a rink to play on, but it's not ideal at all.
So what is it about this team in particular that makes you guys continue to support them?
I don't know, it's just that human story, it's that connection, it's the fact that a reserve that is so far away from our hometown of Kingston can still have that emotional draw, and the fact that these are just some girls that deserve as much access and as much of a right to play hockey and not be disadvantaged by the fact that there was a lack of equipment and there was a lack of access to play other girls' teams, and now there's in a way a bit of a lack of access for them to start their training and continue their training as much as any other girls their age here in the province of Ontario should have access to. And for us, that just means the world to be able to try and support them.
Well, you guys are doing a good thing, and I thank you for taking the time out of your day to come and chat with us about it and share what you guys are doing for these girls. Thanks.
Thank you, Melissa.
Thank you.
Well, that's your news for tonight. If there's anything you missed this week, you can always find it on our website, aptnnews.ca. I'm Melissa Ridge, and stay tuned for Chris's story on APTN Investigates right now, and have a great night.